Hello students, welcome back to class for another semester of Esterbrook University. The subject for today is the Esterbrook transition pen. This is called a transition pen because it marks both a transition in design and chronologically from the dollar pen, which we talked about in the last class, to the Esterbrook J pen, which would come later. The transition pen was made by Esterbrook from approximately 1944 to 1948. It is most easily identified because it has a flat bottom and a plastic jewel on the top. Now, the transition pen went through a few iterations in design. So the earliest transition pens had a jewel, which is sometimes called a toaster top jewel, because it kind of looks like three slots in a toaster, which kind of line up with the three ridges on the clip. It then transitioned to a jewel that looked like this, which is the sort of dome style jewel that Esterbrook pretty much kept on this style pen for the duration. In both these cases, the clip was a somewhat plain clip with three ridges, no name branding on it or anything like that. And as you can see, that is quite a bit of a different clip than they had on the dollar pen. So this is a much heavier, thicker, more substantial clip as well. They then went to a design which kept the domed style jewel, but also then had the name Esterbrook imprinted on the clip. Another big difference between the dollar pen and the transition pen is the cap band is quite a bit wider, as you can see here. But it's also a lever filler pen, etc., made out of the same type materials, and of course, like all Esterbrooks, use the same interchangeable Esterbrook nib units. It has an unscrew cap that takes one full turn to unscrew. One other change between the dollar pen and the transition pen is the brand logo that is imprinted on the pen. The dollar pen says R. Esterbrook and Company, made in USA, and the transition pen has a simpler logo where it simply just says Esterbrook in the same typeface, made in USA. The made in USA, if you notice, is considerably more compact in the transition pen than it is in the dollar pen. Size-wise, the Esterbrook transition pen is not a particularly large pen. So here is the transition pen. Here it is compared to an Esterbrook Model J. It's just a tiny, tiny bit shorter than that. It's just a tiny, tiny bit longer than the dollar pen. And it's a decent amount shorter than a Lamy Safari and a Pilot Metropolitan. As we've talked about before, Esterbrook nib units all unscrew very easily and come right out. In effect, this nib is a 9550, so it's kind of from the 9000 series. It has a green base, which the 9000 series had. So this would have been a slightly more expensive nib. It would have been a tipped nib as opposed to a lot of the other ones in, say, the 2000 series, which are untipped nibs. This particular nib is called a 9550, and this is described as a firm, fine, what they called a posting nib. And by posting, they mean like posting entries in a book for bookkeeping. So this is meant to be a firm, fine nib for writing, accountants to write in ledgers and bookkeeping and things like that. So that was the intended purpose. As I said before, Esterbrook gets really specific for the uses of their nibs, etc. As we'll see, I'll cover all the nibs that I have, at least, in a subsequent class. This nib is almost certainly not the original nib from the pen. These were easily swapped out, replaced, etc. over the years, and this is in all likelihood a later nib. But like we've said before, they're always compatible. As we've said before, Esterbrook pens are always available in a multitude of colors. So here are the traditional 6 colors that Esterbrook pens were available, and there are some variations to these colors, but you have your copper or brown, your blue, your red, your green, your gray, and of course your black. As always, these are lever-filled pens, so what you do is to review, you immerse your pen in the ink, you flip the lever down. So actually, this is a good point to raise. Some of these pens had a stopping mechanism that would only allow the lever to go 90 degrees. This one does not, so it'll go all the way. But you should really only pull it out to the 90-degree point, submerge it in the ink, flip it back, maybe do that 2 or 3 times, and then on the final time you just let it sit for a while so the ink can draw up. Very, very simple pen to fill. And as we said before, these sack-filled pens from this era did not hold a ton of ink, mainly because everybody had ink on their desks all the time, so refilling it, if you had to do that multiple times a day, was not considered that big a deal. People were still just transitioning off of dip pens to some extent. So that is this pen, and I bet you're wondering how it writes. We're going to find that out right now. Okay, folks, what we're writing with here is an Esterbrook transition pen, and this would have been from approximately 1944 to 1948. And this nib is a model. The nib is a 9550, which is a firm, fine posting nib. So this is absolutely a rock firm nib. There is no flex to this whatsoever. So I'm not kidding about that. So it's definitely firm. Is fairly fine. So for things where you don't want any line variation at all and you want a rock solid consistent line for things like writing entries in a bookkeeping ledger, etc., this is exactly what it would be been for. But I will say it is very smooth and it flows nicely, as most Esterbrook nibs do. If this wasn't smooth, these nibs are extremely easy to tune yourself with a little emery board or some micro mesh, etc. They are very, very easy nibs to work on, and quite forgiving, if I do say so myself. In case you're interested in the ink, this ink is a Pilot Blue Black. Pilot Blue Black is pretty cool. It comes in this really cool sort of pedestal bottle. I don't believe they make this particular big bottle, or they don't market this particular big bottle in the US, at least the last time I checked. So you may have to, if you really want one of these 70 milliliter big bottles, you may have to bring it in from a Japanese retailer if you're in the US. But it is a cool ink, and the bottle's just great. I think that might just about do it for this class. As always, I thank you very much for watching. And if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. If you didn't, please let me know, and I'll endeavor to improve. In any case, have a good day. Bye-bye.